From Creamer Media in Johannesburg, this is the Real Economy Report. Our top stories this week. We celebrate the Soccer City roof wetting. We look at South Africa's first water and energy autonomous house. And the DTI warns that the Doha negotiations could drag on to 2011. Aveng and Grinica LTA recently celebrated the roof wetting and the start of the final completion inspections of Soccer City. Dennis Ndaba was there.
The 89,000-seater African calabash-inspired stadium will host both the opening and the final matches of the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Building the stadium required 90,000 cubic meters of concrete, about 10,000 tons of reinforcement steel, 9 million bricks and 13,000 tons of structural steel. The structure has a double layer of fabric roof and required 32,400 fiber cement panels to complete the calabash-inspired design of the facade.
You know, the stadium's designed as a calabash, which is the African cooking pot, as you know, and the external facade, the pattern and the patina on the facade is supposed to be like that, to give you that African pot feel of an old pot that's been well worn, that's had the food and the oil dripping down the outside of it, to give that feeling. And there'll be a ring of fire which sits over the turnstiles where the people come in, and at night there'll be gas that'll light up that ring of fire, and from a distance it'll look like you've got this great big African pot sitting on this ring of fire. It'll really be a wonderful spectacle. The roof design was done by the Italian group Similai. It involves a synthetic covering, which is obviously long wearing and lasting. The facade of the outside pot skin goes onto the roof, and as you can see, it's not designed to be an enclosed stadium. It's designed to embrace the African sun and to provide some shelter for the people. The construction of the stadium, you know, the fact that we managed to deliver the stadium in a relatively short time in a worldwide sense means that the bottlenecks for us were limited. But I mean, obviously there were. We had bottlenecks with some design changes. The stadium was going to be different in terms of some of the seating as to what it is now. That had to change. There were some bottlenecks in funding because the original budgets were overrun. And for the right reasons, there were add-ons onto the contract. We had some bottlenecks in people, we had some bottlenecks in some of the subcontractors, but largely those were all dealt with through a cooperative and proactive approach.
Rising costs of electricity and proposals from power utility Eskom for more increases in the next 3 years have homeowners wondering how they can reduce energy consumption. Lindsay Berry reports after the break.
International Solar Energy Society Scientific Committee co-chair Professor Dieter Holm built a water and energy autonomous house in the Hartbeespoort Dam area near Johannesburg in 1974. He talks to us about the benefits of living in an energy-efficient home.
If you want to live that way, it doesn't mean you have to live a Spartan life. This house has all the mod cons in it. The quality of life is, in fact, it's much superior because you can both enjoy nature and have comfort, indoor comfort, without the need for artificial heating or cooling.
Holmes' house has a number of simple design elements that help to increase efficiency. The house is orientated towards the north, major windows in the house also face north, and it has what Holm calls proper insulation in the roof. He says that comfort drives most of the energy needs in the home and that the construction sector can assist in improving efficiency in South African buildings.
The building sector can make a major contribution to alleviate our current problem, if you don't want to call it crisis. And the one way of dealing with this is stop thinking in supply terms only, but thinking in demand as well. And there we have much to do. And demand means look at buildings not only as passive and inefficient users of energy, but think of them in terms of distributed generators of electricity in this case, which we're talking about Eskom, and cogeneration, meaning that we provide heat and electricity at the same time. As buildings are such long-term investments, they'll outlast the life of their builders and certainly outlast the time of the lifetime of power stations by a factor of at least 4.
Amid what appears to be growing imbalances in the international trade system, South Africa's Department of Trade and Industry warns that a conclusion in the Doha negotiations might not be reached in the next year. Chanel Pringle reports.
DTI International Trade and Economic Development Deputy DG Xavier Karim says that it is increasingly likely that a conclusion in the Doha developmental agenda may only be reached in 2011.
Developing countries, and particularly emerging developing countries, big developing countries such as China, India, Brazil, South Africa and others, are being asked to open up their markets in industrial products, in services, to take on obligations in a range of other areas that in our view would not mean a rebalancing of the international system in favor of developing countries, but would tend to reinforce the imbalances in the system.
The positions between the major players in the negotiations in terms of agriculture, industrial tariffs and services are still wide apart, he says.
But as it stands now, our general assessment is that there is not the kind of flexibility that is being shown, particularly from developed countries, in line with the mandate of the Doha round that suggests that we would be able to reach an agreement by the end of this year or even in the first few months of next year.
Karim's warning supports comments recently made by World Trade Organization DG Pascal Lamy that the 2010 deadline is unlikely to be reached unless there is a serious acceleration in the pace of the negotiating process.
And now for a sneak preview of this week's Engineering News magazine. In our cover story, automotive bosses wonder if South Africa's declining competitiveness in the automotive industry can be salvaged. German vehicle component producer Benteler Automotive will invest R178 million to set up a plant in the Nelson Mandela Bay Logistics Park in Uitenhage. And specialist South African demining and anti-landmine technology company Mechem has gone back to the mine-protected vehicles business. And in Mining Weekly this week, read our cover story on marine mining, which is on the rise owing to the diminishing nature of some land-based mineral resources. We report that JSE and TSX-listed diamond producer Rockwell Diamonds is cautiously optimistic about the diamond market and price trends. And read how South Africa's Financial Services Board imposed a R150,000 insider trading penalty on an advisor to Coal Junior Westcoal. That's Creamer Media's Real Economy Report. Join us again next week for more news and insight into South Africa's real economy.
Engineering news, not just for engineers.